If you're not personally free to be yourself in that most important of all human activities, the expression of love, then life loses its meaning. This is a quote by the late Harvey Milk, who was the first openly gay man to be elected to public office in 1978. This milestone has been attributed to the Stonewall riots at the Stonewall Inn in 1969, an event that changed gay rights in America. Today I would like to walk you through what was happening before the Stonewall riots occurred, what happened during this historic event, and what the Stonewall riots were, and how they paved the way for the diverse LGBTQ movement we see today. Let's look at the unbelievable amount of discrimination gays were facing in the 1960s. Before the events of Stonewall took place, it was difficult to be gay in America. The editors at History.com compiled some notable things that the gays were having to deal with in the 60s. A few of them being they were dealing with persecution, police brutality, and even beatings from the general public. In the 1960s, it was illegal for same-sex individuals to cohabitate. Even just being suspected of being gay could cost them their job, their apartment, or their status in the community. In New York, gays and lesbians weren't even allowed to gather in public places, and it was illegal for bars to serve them drinks. Chad Painter, professor at the University of Dayton, Ohio, wrote an article published by Vox Media stating if someone was arrested for being suspected of being gay, their information was given to the press by the police, and they would publish it in news publications, and it was publicly outing people and destroying lives. There were other groups that existed before Stonewall, like the Medellin Society, but were able to make little progress until the events at Stonewall took place. The Stonewall Inn was a bar in New York. It's located on 54 Christopher Street, a little bohemian neighborhood in the lower Manhattan Greenwich Village. It was one of the few places that anyone who didn't identify as straight could feel a sense of belonging and safety. The patrons of the inn consisted of gays, lesbians, drag queens, blacks, anybody that felt socially awkward in society. Robert Evans, author of several LGBTQ textbooks for Salem Press, reveals how the event occurred. On Friday, June 28th at 1:20 a.m., Deputy Inspector Pine issued a warrant to raid the bar and confiscate the liquor. They were told to expel the over 200 customers with force. Angered by the raid that had just happened a few days prior, the patrons were angry. Once thrown out of the bar, they were throwing pennies, rocks, pretty much anything they could at the officers. Eventually, they started throwing things that were on fire, setting the bar ablaze. The crowd gathered outside, chanting, "We want freedom and gay pride," and onlookers that weren't even gay joined in the chanting. By 3 a.m., the initial raid was over, but the rebellion had just begun. On the next day, Saturday, June 28th, people returned chanting again, spray painting graffiti on the burned remnants of the building saying, "Support gay power and legalize gay bars." Police were again called to break up the crowd, but the crowd was estimated to be around 400 police officers to 2,000 protesters. Chad Painter says again, the following Wednesday, the movement had spread across the country. The press had differing views of the event, so newspapers like the New York Daily News and the Times were using information gathered from the police, whereas the Village Voice was actually using interviews from the protesters and documenting their side of the story. Brenton Varga at the University of South Florida, an author of an article called Stonewall at 50, chronicles the events that took place after. Members of the Medellin Society returned to New York and split into a group called the Gay Liberation Front. Homosexual rights groups, which previously counted about 50, shot up to around 500 nationwide. Later years, that number would increase ad infinitum. The 6 nights will forever be a reminder of the difficulties gays have faced through the years. And here are some of the milestones that many attribute to the rebellion that took place in that little bar in New York in 1969. Varga Brenton Varga, professor at the University of Florida and collegiate author, I repeated that, I have to fix that. Varga states again that the Stonewall Inn paved the rights for gays in America. The Gay Liberation Front launched protests all over the country, and nationwide they were accumulating allies from the black community, the feminist movement, as well as just lots of non-homosexual individuals that were angered by the injustice and finally becoming aware of it in America. There were political, societal, and legal advances as well. The history editors again note a few of these that are important. Police officers were required to take part in sensitivity training, and they developed a gay and lesbian liaison to prevent further police officer violence against homosexuals. In 1970, the one-year anniversary, community members gathered and marched around Stonewall, and this was deemed Christopher Street Liberation Day. It was considered to be the first Pride Parade. In 1978, Harvey Milk, who we learned about earlier, got the help from a local artist named Gilbert Baker and were asked to create an emblem representing the movement. And that's how we got the rainbow flag. More recently, on June 28, 2016, Barack Obama proclaimed Stonewall to be a national monument, recognizing it as a location and a symbol of the LGBTQ movement. To this day, many LGBTQ members of the community attribute their ability to just exist in society to the events surrounding the Stonewall riots. Individuals were facing discrimination for their sexual preference before Stonewall, and they dealt with a lot of it. But as soon as the riots took place in 1969, it finally brought publicity to their cause, and the gay rights movement took off, forever changing the course of lesbians, gays, trans, and queer rights in America, as well as the rest of the world. I'd like to leave you with a photograph, and then I'll share the photograph.